Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Going to get to it right away as we usually do. James Morris going to join us in the second segment, former Hawkeye linebacking great and Super Bowl champion. He's going to join us in the second segment, and then we'll close out the show with Sean Bock of 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports. Big recruiting news. Landed a big fish, literally, last week from Nick Brooks in Cedar Rapids. So you remember Sean and I discussed that last week. Well, it happened. So Sean and I are going to discuss that today. But before all of that, our good buddy John Steppe joins us from the Cedar Rapids Gazette, beat writer of Iowa Hawkeye Athletics. John, good to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you.
Always great to have you here in studio because you got so much information. You're the Cheshire Cat grin here with yesterday's media availability. We record this on Wednesday afternoon, September 13th. So if any changes happen before this show airs and the game on Saturday against Western Michigan at Kinnick Stadium, I know everybody's talking about Penn State the following week, but let's get through Western Michigan first. And you said Kirk Ferentz had kind of a smiley comment yesterday in reference to Western Michigan to the media. So let's start there, please.
Yeah, he mentioned that, 2 weeks away from Big Ten play, as media have pointed out, was kind of his comment. But
multiple times.
Yeah, but Western Michigan this week, one last tune-up on things. So it'll be an interesting, obviously this is not the best opponent on Iowa's schedule by any means. If I had to personally rank Iowa's 12 opponents, I would probably put Western Michigan number 12. So Iowa being a 28.5-point favorite tells you something, considering that this offense has scored 24 and 20 points.
And just wanted to preface a couple of things that you said were discussed in the press conference yesterday, and unless you were under a rock, that is 16 seasons in a row now. A Phil Parker defense, or a Parker defense, I'll say Norm Parker, and then Phil Parker goes all the way back to Norm Parker. 16 years in a row now, Iowa defense has had a pick six. That's an unbelievable stat, John.
Yes, and it's really how Iowa wins games. And you see a lot of people around the country, sometimes you see them say, oh, turnovers are just luck. Well, if that's the case, Iowa's been really, really lucky, really throughout the Kirk Ferentz era. Yeah, so it's how Iowa has won games before, how they continue to win games, and we saw it yet again with a Sebastian Castro pick six, and it's something not to be taken for granted either.
Yeah.
Seems like kind of just of course there'd be a pick six this season. But that's something you don't necessarily see everywhere across the country.
Yeah, well stated. And, again, I'll talk to James Morris more about this, and we've talked to him in the past. In the next segment, we'll have James on and about, playing for the Parkers. Norm when James first came in, but then Phil Parker there now. That's the intriguing thing, was that it was Sebastian Castro and not either Xavier Wangpa or Cooper DeJean, but put another name in there, and that cash back, that defensive cash position, it could turn into some future cash. So Sebastian Castro stepping into that role nicely.
Yeah, and Seth Wallace was just saying, as we recorded this on Wednesday earlier today, about how great of a tackler Castro is as well. And you really, when you have that set of attributes there for that cash position, it really sets up Iowa in a good position. And going back to the 2022 NFL Combine, I asked Dane Belton about who stood out to him at that cash spot, and he mentioned Castro, and now we're starting to see why Dane Belton, who now in the NFL and putting together a nice career, why he was optimistic on him.
Yeah, nice position to play at Iowa defense, and you got to get into that role. As you mentioned, it takes some time. The rest of the defense did what we thought they would do, held on. Hawks got ahead early, and then, I don't want to say sat on the ball, but let's get to that 24 points, 20 points, 24 week one, 20 points last week. Again, I'm not a mathematician. They told me that there'd be no math on this exam, John, but that's not 50 points. They're at 44 points. So how tightly does Beth Goetz hold on to that contract agreement with Brian Ferentz of the 25-point average a game? If they're 5-0, let's hypothetically say they beat Penn State and win the next game, and they're only scoring an average of 20 points a game. Does that change the dynamic, or do they hold to the letter of the contract? So that always intrigues me, but I think they're going to up their points per game average this week against Western Michigan, is safe to say, I'm guessing.
Yeah, if they aren't upping it against Western Michigan,
then it's not gonna,
you're not going to hit 25 points per game if you can't score 25 against Western Michigan, because it's going to be a lot harder against Penn State. It's going to be a lot harder against Minnesota. You can really go down the list. It's going to be a lot harder against Wisconsin, even though Wisconsin was far from perfect against Washington State last week. But this is a team that you have to be able to score points against if you're going to get to those 25 points per game.
And let's be blunt here. The fans haven't been completely enamored with Brian Ferentz. I think that's a safe statement, nor he with them, or however you want to play that. But I would say this to you. I think you've got a good handle on Beth Getz, and you've interviewed her and talked to a lot of people around her and her past, as you've documented on this show. It'll be interesting to see if this push does come to shove and the average isn't there, but the record is there. Do you look at the gross, the mass total and say, okay, maybe we didn't get to 25 points a game, but we're, like we said, 10-2, or a major, a January 1 bowl. I think those are some considerations that'll be interesting to see how Beth Getz handles that.
Yeah, she's said before the season that they're going to evaluate at the end of the season. She understands...
Fluid situation, all that, yep.
She understands that everyone's going to be talking about it, we're going to be talking about it, but she's just focused on rooting for them, and evaluation time will come at the end of the season. But there is no guarantee that she holds on to it. Yeah. The 25 points per game is still in effect right now, but as you were saying, okay, what if they're undefeated and at maybe 23 or 24 points per game?
Yep.
What happens there? So there's no guarantee that she decides to hold on to that. I think it's probably going to be the first really difficult decision that she's going to have to make. Because on one hand, you have the fan base. On the other hand, you have Kirk Ferentz. So that could be a challenging decision if you have potentially a 10-win team that is not quite averaging 25 points per game. So it'll be interesting to watch, but I wouldn't expect to have answers on that in the near future.
I think a lot of people are still a little squeamish on the offensive line. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, pass protection has been the bright spot. And sometimes you see offensive lines where they get the run blocking figured out first, then pass protection takes a little bit longer. This has been kind of the opposite, where pass protection has not been a concern really either of these 2 weeks. When especially you look back at that Utah State game, Cade had time to throw for the most part. There were a couple times where he was put in awkward spots, but all in all, really good pass protection there. The run blocking has been the thing where it's been a little bit more slow coming. Now, the 59-yard play by Jazzy Patterson, a perfect block by Connor Colby right there, block of the year practically. So some encouraging signs there. You haven't seen the consistency yet in run blocking, and that's the thing that when you look at the talent you have in the running back room, if they can get that going, that could really be an X factor for this Iowa offense.
That's the key I was going at, consistency. I'm glad that they jazzed it up and gave it back to Jazz, and he got the payoff for the touchdown after the long run. But, yeah, we got this deep into the interview and haven't even talked about Jazz Patterson yet. So you nailed it right there, John. The talent in that running back room. In the skill position room, we saw it in week 1 with the tight ends, Eric Hall and Luke Lachey and Seth Anderson and Nico Regaini, and Deontay Vines hasn't really even leapt onto the stage yet. But you've got a lot of gas left in the tank on the offensive side of the ball with weapons. We talk defense, a lot of defense and punting. But that offensive line is where it all starts, and we all know this. So, as you mentioned, everybody, all the fans are anxiously awaiting, does this unit finally gel?
Yeah, because if you look at it...
Consistently.
Yes, that's the key word, consistently. And you have the talent at tight end. Wide receiver, you haven't quite seen the results yet so far, but there's reason for optimism when you look at the talent that they have in that room. Quarterback, Cade McNamara, has been not fully healthy until now. Yeah, so he's fully back, able to be participating in everything, which is the first time. He said it's the healthiest he's felt in a month.
Okay.
So we'll see what exactly that looks like on Saturday. Of course, it's easy to say that. But I'll be curious to see, okay, can he do those rollouts? I still think they're probably going to be a little hesitant on some of those quarterback sneaks.
Any other tidbits you have for us? We're going to get to recruiting with Sean on the end of the show here, but anything else that you want to put out there that we haven't covered yet in this segment?
Yeah, Noah Shannon, we know that his appeal was denied by the NCAA. Not a huge surprise considering the NCAA guidelines made it pretty clear about...
And Kirk was quite effusive about that. He went into some detail, so go ahead on that, please.
Yeah, so, the NCAA is making their decision, but Kirk really sees the type of person that Noah Shannon is, and somebody who's really been a class act to media, to coaches, to fans. I hear about it all the time. So it's really too bad to see that situation happen to Noah. And the point that Kirk has brought up, too, is... that, okay, it's probably not just happening at Iowa. He's said, he's hinted toward in a couple different ways, and it's too bad for Noah, somebody who came back for a 6th year, to have this situation. The good news for Noah is that he has put together a lot of good film during his Hawkeye career, but it certainly does not help when you are trying to chase an NFL future and all of your game film is a mid-year-old.
And it was very encouraged on your reporting from Kirk Ferentz's words that Noah's going to be around the program and be a mentor to the younger players and underclassmen. He is John Steppe, beat writer for Iowa Hawkeye Sports at the Cedar Rapids Gazette, Gazette.com. John, my friend, as always, thanks so much for being here. Great to see you.
Yes, great to see you too.
For John Steppe, I'm Dave O'Hara. We'll be back with more Hawkeye and James Morris, and then close out the show with Sean Bock. Back with more in just a few moments.
To have a strong finish, you need an excellent start. It's true on the track and also in the field. That's why Mershman Seeds works tirelessly to deliver cutting-edge technology year after year. Introducing Starting Line, Mershman Seeds' latest advancement in seed treatment, now providing added protection from white mold and sudden death syndrome all season. Ask for Starting Line seed treatment from Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. There's our buddy James Morris, former Hawkeye linebacking great, former Iowa High School Football Player of the Year back in his prep days in Solon, Iowa. I'm playing both sides of the ball. Also Super Bowl champion with the Patriots formerly. And James, I'll tell you, now crushing it in the financial world with Principal, and you're in Central Iowa in Des Moines. So I asked you the big question off the air. Let's bring it on the air. With last week's resounding Hawkeye 20-13 victory, I say resounding, it looked like it was going to be easy pickings and going into halftime, but the Hawks let them hang around, 20-13 victory. But I'm hopefully, for your sake, it quieted down some of the Cyclone fans in your office. Is that true?
Yeah, it was huge for me here in Des Moines, Dave, because now I got bragging rights for a whole year. So there was a lot riding on this one for me personally. But no, I was happy the good guys won.
Yeah, amen to that. How cool is it? And I think it leads the nation by quite a bit. A Hawkeye defense, whether it be Norm Parker-led or now Phil Parker, and in your day you played from the transition from Norman to Phil Parker as a defensive coordinator. The Hawkeye defense, a Parker-led Hawkeye defense, has had a pick six now in 16 straight seasons. James, that's unreal. You were a part of that.
Yeah, I think it's an awesome statistic, and it just speaks to the tradition we have on the defensive side of the football and just being opportunistic. And you gotta say some of those defensive backs are better ball carriers than maybe what a lot of people give them credit for, being able to find the end zone like that.
You told me off the air, but I don't mean to out you here, but you did tell me this off the air, so I have to bring this up. You said Phil Parker, pretty much like a guy in your case, you come out of high school, go into college, and you're a great two-way player, offense and defense, and you said Phil usually takes his pick of the best athletes, and you were kind of ribbing our buddy James Vandenberg, who will start joining us again next week, talking about the offense, but you said Phil always gets the better athletes. Is that still true?
I don't know. You could certainly make that case, I think, with a couple of guys on the defense right now, Cooper DeJean being one of them. I think the receivers coach or even the running backs room might like to have him in their room for a game or two.
Yeah, just a bit. But I always find that interesting because you're right. Athletes aplenty. We mentioned it in the first segment. Sebastian Castro, Defensive Player of the Week. That cash position, again, James, rears its, in this case, wonderful head for the Hawkeyes. And he really has stepped into that role nicely.
Yeah, and those guys used to be linebackers, so I'm a little bit bitter about it, Dave, since you bring it up. That was Chris Kirksey and A.J. Eads and Ed Miles and some of those guys back in the day. But I guess they figured they needed either somebody better looking or somebody a little more trim to play that position. But yeah, don't get me going on that, Dave. There should be 3 or 4 linebackers on the field at all times, not 2. But I guess that just makes me a dinosaur.
I had to tweak you, so thank you for walking into that. That was with intent. But
there'd be no Ben Neiman today, think about it that way.
Well stated. I know you know this from your playing days, but I still have to ask, is there any danger in the Hawkeyes, especially the defense, overlooking Western Michigan and peeking over the hedges into the Penn State game next week? I got to believe their heads are pretty right and focused on Western Michigan. True?
Oh, absolutely. It's been an Iowa football truism for as long as Coach Ferentz has been here. Well, maybe not the first 2 years, but on any given Saturday, we could just about beat anybody. And on any given Saturday, we could just about lose to anybody. And I'm not sure where the bottom is there if we play that bad. And we know that Western Michigan's got some good guys. They're on scholarship, as Coach used to say. So they got to be ready to go. It wasn't that long ago. It was my junior year. We had a chance to maybe get the ship righted kind of early to mid-season and beat Central Michigan. And we gave it away to them with some dumb penalties and some special team stuff in the fourth quarter, and we ended up finishing the year 4-8. So God willing, we don't go down that path this year, but to think that a MAC game is a sleeper game by any stretch of the imagination hasn't been true for the last 15 years.
Yeah, and Kirk Ferentz's comments yesterday during the press availability, as we record this on Wednesday afternoon, September 13th. But yesterday, Coach Ferentz, in as much said what you just said. He said, "Oh no, there's no danger. I know you media want me to," or in words to this effect, "I know you media, you want me to look ahead to Penn State, but we're focused on Western Michigan." And so this is an opportunity not just to win the game, but to get things righted as you head into these Big Ten conference games, specifically Penn State next week.
Yeah, and I did see a ton of improvement from the offensive line week over week. I would say to the Iowa fans, listening today or watching today, notice the difference in run concepts from week 1 versus week 2, and how many of the concepts that we are seeing now, like the counter play that we had some success with, are Wisconsin concepts that Wisconsin has historically run. And so you're starting to see some of the influence from Bud Meyer and even some of the crossing patterns they're doing with the 2 tight ends and what have you. So the playbook has changed materially from my perspective year over year. But yeah, we're not necessarily firing on all cylinders yet. And I think we're close. I'm seeing a lot of good things, and I'm seeing some missed execution where the gap between what we're doing and where we need to be is much smaller than what it's been over the last 2 years. And to me, I'm actually encouraged by that, given Cade is still relatively new in the program and we have new receivers. They can continue to improve. This could be a very, very capable offense by midseason, hopefully in 2 weeks.
Well, James, as always, I love the bringing the player's perspective into this, and great analysis and assessment on your part. And we'll catch up with you in a couple weeks. We'll have James Vandenberg on next week giving us his perspective, first time this year. So looking forward to catching up with him. But it's always great catching up with you, and I look forward to catching up with you in a couple of weeks. He's James Morris, folks, former Hawkeye linebacking great and Super Bowl champion formerly of the New England Patriots. But James, my friend, thank you so much. Great seeing you, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, pleasure as always, Dave. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks indeed. For James Morris, I'm Dave O'Hara. We'll be back with more to close out the show with Sean Bock. Back with more Hawkeye in a few moments.
Who do you trust to produce the best yield? A seed company that's chasing technology, or a seed company that's writing a book on it? Mershman Seeds is a leader in technology. We're independent and family owned. Our sister company, MS Technologies, provides access to world-class traits and genetics. And our starting line seed treatment is second to none. Who can you trust with your yields? Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, closing out the show here with our good buddy Sean Bock from 24/7 Sports, as you see, CBS Sports affiliate. And Sean, big news, but first of all, great seeing you as always. Thanks for joining us in the studio.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Dave. It's always a good time.
Same here, I would agree, and you're welcome, and thank you. Nick Brooks, I was just saying we can't, and I'm not going to make any more size jokes, but big dude, committed to the Hawkeyes, but the story's not over there yet. I don't mean to give viewers PTSD, but I just got 2 words for you, Caden Proctor. But as of now, as of last Friday, we record this on Wednesday afternoon, September 13th, the Cedar Rapids native came back from Georgia to Cedar Rapids, still has another year of high school left after this one.
Yep.
But committed to the Hawkeyes last Friday. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, all looks good now. I mean, obviously committing to Iowa early in the process. There was originally some thought that he would be an early commit. They decided, I'm going to push things back a little bit and see what else is out there. But it was really interesting because I talked to Nick before his announcement, and he visited Iowa City the weekend before for the Utah State opener. And he told me a story about, so he has 17 brothers and sisters. He told me a story about how his little brother, a couple of years ago, fell on his bike and bursted his pancreas. Ooh. So his parents thought he was just sick, just throwing up, kind of just shaking up everything. But they took him to the hospital, and they found out that if they hadn't brought him to the hospital, he probably would have died. And I think he was around 7 or 8 at the time. And during the visit, Brooks wasn't really thinking about committing, but then once the first quarter ended and everyone did the wave and he did the wave, he said that kind of moved him a little bit, and he was like, okay, my brother was right there before, and just to know that it just felt right to him.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty cool spur of the moment thing. But yeah, I mean, I was getting a big dude, 6'8", 375 pounds. His weight's kind of fluctuating.
Still growing young lad, we can say.
moves really well for his size. Has potential to play early. Obviously, conditioning is kind of a problem right now because he is so big at this age, and there's certain things probably body-wise that he wants to clean up. But, I mean, there is just so much upside and so much potential there. It's hard not to be excited about this commitment if you're Iowa.
Yeah, if you're not a tight end, but an offensive lineman, that's where a lot of the former Hawks are making it in the NFL and other positions. But, yeah, he would have a nice home at Iowa if it plays. And I don't want to get too much inside the game here, but you said those other Power 5 schools, the big ones, Georgia and the like, are still reaching out to him on a regular basis.
Yeah, Georgia was really hitting him up when they found out that he was going to make an announcement. They were making a real push for him. Obviously, he spent the last 2 years there. Wanted to come back to Iowa City because he's a big family kid. His friends, he wanted to play with his friends that he grew up with. And Kennedy has a real shot, I think, to be one of the contenders in 5A this year.
Yeah.
So they have a pretty good class of juniors and a couple seniors, too, that are pretty solid. But, yeah, those SEC schools. And I'm not saying NIL is going to be a huge factor, but NIL holds a lot of weight in SEC schools, and especially Georgia. So
yep. In the last few years it has, and it's going to continue to. I didn't mean to interrupt, but you're right.
No, good. I mean, I think Iowa has a lot to sell. Obviously, he doesn't really want to leave home again, and I think that works out for Iowa because he already left home, and now he came back, and I think that's going to play into effect. And he has a chance to potentially compete for snaps early at Iowa, I think, at those tackle positions. I mean, Mason Richmond, I know he's a junior right now, senior range around there, but he only has, I think, 1 or 2 years of eligibility left. That right tackle position is going to be open in the next couple of years. I know Jack Dotzler is a name that Iowa really likes, but there's going to be competition at those tackle positions, and I know the transfer portal is probably an avenue that Iowa's going to go, but I think if you're Iowa, you can really sell to Brooks that, hey, you can come in and compete early for those snaps, if you continue to do the things that you need to do. Yeah. Because there's a real avenue there for him to compete.
Iron sharpens iron. We like the competition. But, again, as we say, went to Georgia for a couple years now, back in Cedar Rapids, going to Kennedy, Iowa City, a 25-minute drive right down the interstate, close by the wave. See, it's amazing sometimes, Sean, even for younger guys like that, the little things matter. Right. And so, like you said, sometimes you know when you know in the feeling. So hopefully that's the case. Nick Brooks, for now, an Iowa Hawkeye, and we'll see how that plays out in the next year and a half. But, Sean, there's some basketball news with Fran McCaffrey. You said there's some good recruiting. And, of course, as you know, Sean Bock, recruiting expert for 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports. So let's talk some basketball recruiting with Fran McCaffrey, please.
Yeah, Isaiah Johnson-Arigu, 6'7" forward out of Totino Grace in Minneapolis. Real basketball power up there. Iowa head coach Fran McCaffrey went up there last night, Tuesday, to have an in-home visit with Johnson-Arigu and his family. And things went really well from what I've been told. But there's a decision coming up on Saturday. This is the guy that Iowa really wants to add at that 3 or 4 spot alongside Cooper Koch in the 2024 class, and these two would really fit well with each other. So right now it's Iowa, Miami, Virginia Tech, and Northwestern. All 4 kind of have a different pitch. I mean, Miami is the latest visit, and I mean, the Canes, they've had a decent amount of success recently, and basketball seems to be on the rise there.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech's got a really good fit for him. Mike Young does a good job down there in Blacksburg. Northwestern, I mean, if you want to be set for life, go to Northwestern. So that's...
And Chris Collins, of course, close to Fran McCaffrey, does a great job there with that program as well.
Right. And Fran, I mean, I think personally Iowa might be the best fit for him from a player perspective.
Okay.
And from what I know, talking to people around the Iowa staff and, kind of just being involved in the weeds, that Iowa thinks he could potentially have an early impact. Not necessarily a 20-25 minute guy, but I think there is a lot of excitement of what he could bring, not just in his first or second year, but just that upside as he continues to develop a jump shot. He's a really good athlete, a lot of length, can project to multiple positions, kind of the type of wing forward that Fran McCaffrey really likes. So,
sure.
Yeah, it's a big decision coming up. We'll see what happens. I think Iowa's sitting in a good spot, but I'm not ready to say as of Wednesday that, the Hawkeyes are going to be the team to beat. But things went well last night. I know that.
Good to know. And again, as always, we timestamp it here. We record this show on Wednesday afternoon, September 13th. And truly, in Sean's world, recruiting world, it is a fluid situation day to day. So we always want to make sure we preface that by saying as of today. So Sean, as always, great stuff. A lot happening in recruiting, not just football, but basketball, all sides of sports, men's programs, women's program. Sean's got it all covered for 24/7 Sports, an affiliate of CBS Sports, as well as great game analysis you do too. So be sure to check out all of Sean's great work, 24/7 Sports, and you see all of Sean's information at the bottom of the screen along with mine throughout this show and this segment, along with James Morris and John Steppe. So we always make sure to check out at the bottom of the screen to look at all the guys like Sean and John's great handiwork. So Sean, great stuff as always.
Thank you, Dave.
You're very welcome. Thank you. So for Sean Bock, James Morris, John Steppe, my production partner Mike American, and to you, the viewers, that's all from Hawkeye. I'm Dave O'Hara. Thanks to all of you. And as always, thanks for staying tuned at the end of the program for these rolling credits to give our advertisers and sponsors the attention and credit they so richly deserve. And as always, to our aforementioned guests and to you, the viewers. That's all from us at Hawkeye. Thanks to all of you.